Louis-Nicolas Davout was born May 10th, 1770, in Anou in the French province of Champagne. He was the son of an officer in the Royal French Army. Unlike many of his colleagues, he did have roots in nobility, though they lived in a rented farmhouse. He was a poor nobility, but nobility nonetheless, and he was able to get military schooling at Brienne-le-Château before he would be sent to l'École Militaire, where he would be entering just as Napoleon Bonaparte would be leaving in 1785. He would graduate from the academy in 1788, where he became a sous lieutenant in a regiment of cavalry in Pas-de-Calais in northern France, near the English Channel. Unlike his other nobles, in 1789 he would take the principles of the French Revolution to heart and become a loyal follower of their tenets and beliefs. He would become a chef de bataillon and serve in the volunteer regiment in his sector of France as a young officer. At the Battle of Neerwinden in 1793, he would distinguish himself in battle that would end the French army withdrawing from the Dutch Low Country. But revolution would prove to undo the young Davout. The day he was promoted to general of a brigade, the revolutionary government had him stripped of command for his aristocratic birth and roots. In 1796, Davout would be appointed to the army of Sambre-et-Meuse. He'd be joining the Rhine campaign in efforts to push the Holy Roman Empire out of the war. However, the original plan to have the two armies in the north would fail, and in fact the army of Italy, commanded by a young General Bonaparte, would in fact end the War of the First Coalition, which had been raging since 1792. General Louis Desaix would discuss with the young Bonaparte, who was planning his invasion and conquest of Egypt, but Desaix would convince Bonaparte to bring Davout with them on the campaign. Davout was given command of one of the cavalry in Desaix's division and would fight at the Battle of the Pyramids, July 21st, 1798, but soon after would fall ill and be sick-bed until December of that year. He would return to service and be one of the officers who remained with the Army of the Orient, serving to the end of the campaign in the Middle East. He would miss the Brumaire coup and rise of the consulate as well as the French victory at Marengo, where his superior, Louis Desaix, would die helping turn the tide for the French. However, Napoleon had appreciated not only Davout's ability as a soldier, but even more appreciated his loyalty. So in 1800, he would arrange a marriage with Davout and his sister Pauline's sister-in-law, Aimée Leclerc, and he would also give the general the rank of division general and command of the Conciliar Guards of Grenadiers, a precursor to the Imperial Guard. In 1804, though, the empire will be declared, and with 17 others, Davout would be risen to the rank of Marshal of France, and he would be one of the more loyal of the marshals. In fact, he was one of the younger men to be promoted at the age of 34 as well, with little combat experience, which caused much friction in the Marshal's corps. The first view Davout would have of the true Napoleonic Wars was the naval battle of Blocknez and Grisnez, where the French and Batavian Republic fleets would defeat the Royal Navy. Napoleon would then appoint Davout to command the Grande Armée's Third Corps, where he would make the 48-hour march to Austerlitz. The Third Corps would strike into the Russian flank and in fact end up taking the brunt of the combat on December 2nd, 1805. It would of course end in a French victory and the end of the Third Coalition and dissolution of the Holy Roman Empire. His next test as a commander would come in 1806 as the War of the Fourth Coalition against Prussia and Russia raged on. One of the major battles would take place on October 14th, 1806, at the dual battles of Jena-Austerlitz. Napoleon with 40,000 men would engage the Prussians commanded by Prince Hollenhal at Jena, with a Prussian force of over 55,000. Davout, with 26,000 men, would engage with the Duke of Brunswick and his 64,000 men at Austerlitz, almost 3 times the size of his force. But Davout would win, beating the odds and even wounding the Duke of Brunswick, who would die later on. A renowned historian, Francois-Guy Hortol, would later remark of the battle, "At Jena, Napoleon won a battle he could not lose. At Austerlitz, Davout won a battle he could not win." Napoleon, who now knew that he had only fought a corps and Davout fought the main army, would give him and the Third Corps the honor of being the first troops to enter Berlin on October 25th, 1806. Davout would later come down on the Russian flank on the second day of the Battle of Elwha with only 15,000 men, but because of the pressure from Murat's cavalry charge and the continuous engagement of other corps, he would be successful. Following the victory at Elwha, on June 14, 1807, the French would finally defeat the Russians at the Battle of Friedland. Following the negotiations and signing of the Treaty of Tilsit in July of 1807, Napoleon named Davout the governor-general of the newly formed Duchy of Warsaw, where he would serve over the Polish population. 1809 came, though, and with it the War of the Fifth Coalition, when Austria rose up to fight against France again. Davout would earn renown at the Battle of Ekmel on April 22, 1809. Davout was able to establish a beachhead across the Danube and defeat the Austrian Archduke Charles. But he would face Charles again at the Battle of Wagram, July 5 to 6, 1809, which would end in a French victory and the end of the War of the Fifth Coalition. He would join Napoleon in 1810 to meet his new wife, the Empress Maria Louisa, and would be given possibly the most important assignment of his career. By personal command of Napoleon, Davout was given the job of organizing the Corps of Observation of the Elbe. What this job was organizing the largest army Europe will ever see. Napoleon would appoint him command of the First Corps of this 700,000 men army, who on June 24, 1812, invaded the Russian Empire, in which he would take Minsk and defeat the Russians at the Battle of Saltavanka, and he would join the rest of the army at Smolensk. After the burning of Moscow, Davout would be appointed to command the rear guard of the army to ensure its survival back to Europe proper. At the Battle of Vyazma, Napoleon removed Davout from this command as he believed he was going too slow, and he would be replaced in his command by Michel Ney. Davout would again be humiliated by the Russians at the Battle of Krasnoy, where the Russians actually would pillage the French wagon train, and among the captured things was Davout's trunk, in which was his marshal's baton. The loss of his baton would be a personal blow to him, and he would not see the emperor personally again until 1815. But in April of 1813, he would be appointed to command the Hamburg military district, which had been besieged by the Russians as the War of the Sixth Coalition raged on. Starting with 40,000 men, as the war raged on, he would be forced to shrink his force to 15,000 men, when he was required to send 25,000 men to defend the mainland of France. Davout, loyal as ever, refused to surrender, and the siege would begin on December 24th, 1813, and it would not end until May 12th, 1814. The siege would only end when orders from the re-established Bourbons, Louis XVIII, sent a direct command to Davout to stand down and return the city. Davout would not be at Fontainebleau. He would be besieged following orders of the abdicated for a month longer. Now this is where we enter the field of controversy. The population of Hamburg stood around 110,000 civilians before Davout assumed command. After his control of the district and end of the siege, 55,000 civilians had died. This was due to reprisals under Davout's orders and the starving of citizens to keep the army fed. He would be universally criticized for these actions. With his emperor gone, unlike other marshals, Davout opted to retire from his military career, still loyal to Napoleon. But Napoleon would not forget this, and when he returned to France and retook the throne, Davout was not only brought out of retirement, but was declared the new Minister of War. He would remain in Paris during the 100 Days, and when the French army was defeated at Waterloo, he rushed the home army to defend France. But a provisional government had been formed, led by Napoleon's former police minister, Joseph Fouché, who had ordered Davout to negotiate terms and then directed him to evict Napoleon from the Élysées palace. Napoleon would later say about Davout, "He betrayed me too. He has a wife and children, and he thought that all was lost. He wanted to keep what he had got. I thought that Davout loved me, but he only loved France." Davout would be exiled to Normandy in December of 1815, following the second restoration of the Bourbons. He would lose his titles and lands, and from his exile he would speak out about the condemnation and execution of Michel Ney. In 1817, though, Davout would be given back his titles and reconciled with the Bourbons, and appointed to the House of Peers. He would then serve as the mayor of Savy-sur-Orge, outside of Paris in 1822, where he would only serve a one-year term. Davout would die peacefully in Paris on June 1st, 1823, at the age of 53. He would be buried at the Père Lachaise cemetery in Paris, where he lays with many of his fellow comrades and marshals. Louis-Nicolas Davout was a character of his time. He was almost eliminated due to his roots, but showed his worth, and through his merit he rose to become the most loyal commander to Napoleon, to the point that on the Arc De Triomphe, it does not say Davout. It says Davoust, as his loyalty to his emperor knew no bounds. But his loyalty to France overshadowed that love, and he would die peacefully, wrapped in his glory. Thanks for joining us. Davout is absolutely a fascinating person from the Napoleonic era. I had a lot of fun learning about him. If you're a returning viewer and not yet subscribed, I hope I earned your subscription today. Please like, share, and comment, and we will see you in the next one.